This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. Well, it seems as though we may be reaching toward the end of one of the legal dramas in which Donald Trump is embroiled. This one being the documents case, the charge of violation of the Espionage Act, the special counsel Jack Smith. It is now being reported that Donald Trump's indictment, his criminal felony indictment, will come very, very shortly. As early as maybe today. We don't know. This is from the Independent. I'm going to read from this headline. Prosecutors ready to ask for Trump indictment on obstruction and Espionage Act charges. The Independent has learned that prosecutors are prepared to ask grand jurors to vote on charges as early as Thursday. So for all of you who have vehemently, sometimes rudely, said that I'm an idiot for thinking anything would be done, I guess the jury's still out, no pun intended, we will see. But I think still it is more likely than not that Donald Trump is convicted of these crimes. Whether or not he goes to jail or they do some kind of a sentencing bargaining deal, I don't know. I would hope, as I think you would, that they would land his ass in jail. I'm going to read a little bit from this. It is a varied article, and there's a lot that's going on. A lot of legal maneuvering. There's a second grand jury in Florida to try to cover their ass as far as the possibilities of jurisdictional issues. But we're going to get to the crux of it right here. The Department of Justice is preparing to ask a Washington, D.C. grand jury to indict former president, ex-president Donald Trump for violating the Espionage Act and for obstruction of justice as soon as Thursday, adding further weight to the legal baggage facing Mr. Trump as he campaigns for his party's nomination in next year's presidential election. The Independent has learned that prosecutors are ready to ask grand jurors to approve an indictment against Mr. Trump for violating a portion of the U.S. Criminal Code known as Section 793, which prohibits, quote, gathering, transmitting, or losing any, quote, information respecting the national defense. The use of Section 793, which does not make reference to classified information, is understood to be a strategic decision by prosecutors that has been made to short-circuit Mr. Trump's ability to claim that he used his authority as president to declassify documents he removed from the White House and kept at his Palm Beach, Florida property long after his term expired on January 20th, 2021. That section of U.S. criminal law is written in a way that could encompass Mr. Trump's conduct, even if he was authorized to possess the information as president, because it states that anyone who, quote, lawfully having possession of, access to, control over, or being entrusted with any document related to the national defense and willfully communicates, delivers, transmits, or causes to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted, or attempts to communicate, deliver, transmit, or cause to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted, the same to any person not entitled to receive it, or willfully retains the same and fails to deliver it on demand to the officer or employee of the United States entitled to receive it, can be punished by as many as 10 years in prison. So not a slap on the wrist, this kind of a sentence. And this likely would go for not just the bulk, but for every instance. You see, Donald Trump is used to being treated as though he is above the law. He acts in a manner that indicates he thinks he is above the law. He attacks judges that are presiding over cases he's involved in. He attacks juries. He attacks prosecutors. He attacks allies of his. He is an unhinged maniac, drunk on the power of his wealth and influence over the course of his septuagenarian life. There's more here, 2 more paragraphs. It is understood that prosecutors intend to ask grand jurors to vote on the indictment on Thursday, but that vote could be delayed as much as a week until the next meeting of the grand jury to allow for a complete presentation of evidence or to allow investigators to gather more evidence for presentation if necessary. Now, being someone who has served for a year and a half on a federal grand jury, I mention it every time for those of you who don't know. I was on a grand jury in Orange County, California, the same grand jury that indicted Michael Avenatti, and I'm pretty intimately familiar with this process, having lived it for week after week after week for 12 to 18 months. And the reason I went 18 months and not the normal term of 12 is that they extended our grand jury for the Michael Avenatti case, just in case they needed to present new evidence so they wouldn't have to impanel a new grand jury and then show them all of the evidence that was showed to us. And I think that's what's happening here. They want a fulsome presentation of the evidence to this grand jury to drive home the points, to make it all make sense rather than week after week after week expecting people to remember the entire sordid tale. That's what we're looking at here. That is likely what's going to happen. And if they do wait to do the presentation thing, they could get that done in a day or two, very likely a day. It would just be the fulsome picture of what took place. One last paragraph here. Another source familiar with the matter has said that Mr. Trump's team was recently informed that he is a target of the Justice Department probe, which began in early 2022 after the National Archives and Records Administration discovered more than 100 documents bearing classification markings in a set of 15 boxes of Trump administration records retrieved from Mar-a-Lago, the century-old mansion turned private beach club, blah, 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 blah. No one gives a shit about Mar-a-Lago's history. So this is where we are. This is good news for me, makes me feel real good. but moreover and more importantly, this is good for the country. This is good for the rule of law. This is good for justice. This is good for consequence and to send a message to the American people that maybe once, finally, we won't have this two-tier justice system where the rich and powerful and connected can do whatever they want, and the rest of us have to abide by the rules as stated in U.S. code. What do you think? Are you an optimist about this, as I am, or are you more cynical? I'd love to know. You can call, leave me a brief voicemail. 714-576-4054. Of course, you can absolutely, as always, email me the old-fashioned way, daily@dollemore.com. Subscribe. End of the year, 500,000 subscribers. Subscribe. That probably looked insane to someone who hasn't heard me already say that I'm trying to get to 500,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and it's only with your help that I'm going to be able to do it. So please, even if you like me just a little bit, subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to do more to support my work than just subscribe, you can become a channel member. You can click the super thanks button, or even better, you can go over to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. I love you guys. I appreciate you very much. If you live somewhere where there is smoke, like I do here in Washington, D.C., or New York City, or anywhere up and down the mid-Atlantic coast, take care of yourself. Wear a mask. Do what federal authorities and health authorities are saying. Stay indoors as much as possible. If you have an air purifier, kick that thing on and keep yourself safe. Be genuine. Take care of one another.